Okay, guys, welcome to a positive edition of Rotten Reviews. I'm going to be taking a look at the 2019 HBO series, Season 1 of His Dark Materials. It has an 81% on the tomato meter and an 81% on the audience score. It has 947 audience reviews. Shy of 1,000, but I'm still going to do this. I'm still going to offer up my opinion and take a look at these audience reviews. I agree with the 81% audience score. I agree, certified fresh. I'm going to say that largely this is an entertaining 8-season show or 8-episode show, and that I thought it dragged a little in the middle. It dragged a little and wasn't quite up to par as far as keeping me in a magical world in the middle episodes. I felt that I was back in World War I era Earth a little bit too much and not in a fantasy setting. But I thought the beginning and the ending of this, especially the ending episodes of this, the final 2-3 episodes, it really picked up the pace. It got more convincing. It held my interest a lot more. But in the middle, I was starting to become bored, and I was wondering also if maybe the budget didn't allow too much to happen magically in the middle. But in any case, let's take a look at the audience reviews. We have a 2-star or 1.5-star review from an hour ago, making this 1 hour ago, December 28th. 2019. I'm really struggling to see what everyone liked about this show. I so wanted to love it, but seriously, the series was a meandering mess. So many key scenes were ruined with bad writing and directing, some good acting, but that's about it. They butchered the story. Well, I'll say no, I give this 3 stars because I found it interesting enough to keep watching all the way until the final episode. 1.5 stars, maybe that's coming from somebody that read the original 3 novels and doesn't find that this captured them adequately, or at least started to. I have no prior knowledge of the books. I'm not a fan. I just barely know anything about it because I have actually seen the older film based upon the same books called The Golden Compass, and I wasn't impressed with that movie. I found it kind of boring. With this, I wasn't bored all the way through. I was entertained enough to keep watching, and in the middle, yeah, I could have said maybe 2 stars, but it finished with 3 stars in my opinion. If the second season continues on, with the quality that the last couple of episodes on season 1 had, then I will continue watching. But if it gets boring again, I may not continue it. So I will say 3 stars, but that's going to drop really fast if it doesn't start the next season with the same quality. Let's move on. 3 stars from 15 hours ago. I wanted to love this, but I felt nothing for the lead actress. I only continued to watch because of Ruth Wilson. I found myself more invested in Will's story and wanted to follow his story rather than Lyra's. More Ruth Wilson in season 2, please. Ruth Wilson is Mrs. Coulter. She's kind of like a villain. Largely, she's a villain character, but we're supposed to see how she's not completely evil. But for most of this, she comes across as ruthless, and she's not very likable. I don't know what they're trying to do with her exactly because she started out as kind of being sympathetic and then became a straight-up villain. And then at the end, it was kind of unclear whether she should be seen as a villain or I'm supposed to feel something for her. And I guess that's why one of the reviewers called this a mess. I don't think she was the make or break of this thing, so I disagree with this reviewer. The lead actress, I've never seen her in anything else. I don't think she's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't think she's rotten either. I think she has a lot of potential. She wasn't off-putting. Her acting wasn't bad, but she can definitely improve in a season 2. I'll say that much. 5 stars, not English. 3 stars, 23 hours ago. It was okay, not that engaging. I'll largely agree with that. If you were, in the middle episodes, episode 4, episode 5, I was starting to get bored, and There were moments that it picked up for me, in particular the story when it went into the modern, into our world, in the modern world, and it had the crossover between the fantasy world and our world. I thought it should have given us more of that. It should have explored a lot more of our world. 5 stars, great acting, but most importantly, it has the feel you are hoping for from a Pullman adaptation. I can't speak to that because I haven't read the books, don't know anything about them. My first, encounter with this material was the movie The Golden Compass, but I'm going to disagree on the 5 stars. I think that this just dragged too much in the middle episode, so I'm going to say 3 stars, no more than that. It could get better though. 5 stars 2 days ago. Wonderful, compelling, great script, great story, faithful and fresh adaptation of the books. It is very enjoyable. Having read all 3 books in the series, to see certain reveals pulled in much earlier than they were in the books, and to see certain background information to characters like Will Perry. Lyra is a delight every time she's on screen. Casting is excellent. John Fogg gives a breathtaking performance. The style of the show makes it appropriately darker and grittier than the failed film adaptation. I don't know about dark and gritty, like it seemed like it wanted to do that, but it didn't want to stray too far away from like a family audience. I think it could have been better if it was like more geared towards adults. And from what I've read, the original books weren't made for children. They're actually made for everybody, and it's just been popular to classify them as children's books because children are the main focus of the characters, I guess. Having not read the books, that's just what I hear from people, that these weren't intended to be children's books. And so I think that this series is trying to walk the line between being a children's story and being a story for adults. It's trying to be a family story, whatever that is. And I think it could benefit from being a little bit darker. I'm not saying it has to have blood and dismemberment and whatnot and become R-rated, but it needs to be a little bit darker and edgier, and I think that's maybe why it kind of dragged for me in the middle, because I'm not a fan of stuff like, that's straight up made for kids. Like, I'm not really a fan of Harry Potter type material. And that's why a lot of those movies felt boring to me and I couldn't continue on with them. And I think this one, it needs to not do that. It needs to like bring in more of an adult audience and, don't disregard the kids, but don't just make this for kids, because it's just going to be hard to continue on like that, at least for somebody like me. 5 stars 2 days ago. Amazing show. Just watch it. True to the source material. Great acting and production. 1.5 stars, so mediocre. There is some pretty good acting in there, but the characters are bizarre and not believable. The entire show is about humans having demons, exterior souls in the form of animals, yet in a crowded room we may see 1 or 2 demons. We almost never see the main character interact with her demon, and their relationship is as superficial as possible. For such a magical world, this show felt devoid of magic. I tried so hard to enjoy the series, I liked the books, but this show just isn't. You know what? I'll kind of agree with that, most of that, because I thought that was a flaw too. One of the reasons why it became a little dull is because, like this reviewer said, you're in crowded rooms with a lot of people in those rooms, and you only see a few of the demons, and sometimes you don't see any of them, like they've just magically kept themselves out of view. I guess in some cases you can say they're hiding under people's clothes because the movie shows that sometimes, but at other times it's like they completely forgot or they ignored the demons and they're just not around in view of the camera. And then it is a little disappointing that you don't get more characterization between people and their demons. You get a little bit of dialogue here and there, but the movie doesn't give you enough to go on. It's almost like it's trying to keep it a little mysterious, and yet it's not mysterious. You know that the demons are some kind of exterior soul, but yet it doesn't feel real enough. I mean, if you were actually around your demon, no matter what kind of animal it is at all times, you would have a lot more interaction with them. And the movie only shows you a little bit of that. It's like they're avoiding that. And I don't know if they just don't want to put too much CGI in with these demon characters. The budget's not enough for that. Or that there's not enough running time. I don't know what it is, but I feel that is a legitimate gripe with this, is that we don't get enough interaction between people and their demons. you would get a lot more. You would get a lot more from something that, you have this demon around you all the time, 24 hours, 7 days a week. You wouldn't just be having a few conversations with it. You'd be having conversations with it like all the damn time. And yet this movie doesn't give us a sense of that. So I kind of agree with what that reviewer said. 4 stars 2 days ago. I am really enjoying this show. I think it has a lot to offer. The storytelling and acting are fantastic. Some of the show slogs on a bit too much, but that's really my only complaint. Hoping the next season will kick it up a notch, but keep the intricate storytelling moving well. Yeah, it dragged a lot in the middle episodes. Felt too much like, we're on board that barge moving down the river in London. It felt like we were literally on that barge with the characters. And what I mean by that is that things were crawling along like at that pace. And I thought that was a mistake. It wasted at least 2 episodes when we're on a barge. The characters are. Wasn't exciting. Could have been done better. To me, that was the big, part of this that I felt bored by when we're on that barge. 4 stars 2 days ago. Not English, so I'm going to skip it. 4 stars again 2 days ago. I was stoked for this show since HBO dropped the first trailer, and I must say it has not disappointing. While the last episode ended with a bit of a fizz, I'm excited to see what the next chapter brings. HDM brings a complexity to its characters that is rarely seen in today's television. Mrs. Coulter, played by Ruth Wilson, is hands down the most thought-provoking character. Ruth Wilson's acting is incredible, and it is clear she really studied the character and has planned out her character's development. Well, I'll say there's a problem with her character. We are shown on one episode that she can actually send her monkey or her monkey demon can actually be far apart from her body, further apart than should be allowed by the rules of the world. And in fact, the main character of Lyra comments on this, that how is it possible that this monkey character can be so separated distance-wise from its host? And the series promises us like some kind of mystery there, like it presents this to us as a mystery that will be solved, and then we're left at episode 8. We still haven't solved this mystery. It kind of leaves it hanging there, like it kind of dropped it or forgot about it. Why is Mrs. Coulter's character? Why has she been able to have her demon off doing missions far away from her? How does this work? It doesn't answer this. Maybe it'll answer it in the second season, but it's very disappointing that it teases that but never gives us that by season 8 or episode 8. Keep wanting to say season. Clearly it's episodes. That's the other thing about 8-episode seasons. I think maybe in a person's mind, in an audience member's mind, it's too easy to conflate a really short 8-episode season with just a big, long, extended movie, because even though HBO is releasing these episodes on a weekly basis, dragging it out, in my mind, I keep wanting to think about it in terms of just an overly long movie, and I think that's a flaw with this. I think if you want to do, the traditional thing, where network television had episodes, and these hour-long episodes would be, say, 23 episodes spread out throughout the year with maybe a 3-month break. Well, HBO is doing a thing, and they've done this also with the Watchmen series, where you have 8 or 10 episodes, and they're just going to be spread out over 2.5 or 3 months. I don't know if this is going to prove to be a real marketable formula. I don't know if this is going to be a thing, because to me it just it makes the show seem like an overly long movie, and you see where I'm referring to it as a movie sometimes by accident, and that's why, because this doesn't feel like a TV show. It feels almost like a long movie. But that's not a proper critique of this actual show, so I'll move on. 2.5 stars 2 days ago. Little kids show. I kept hoping it would graduate out of the 5 to 10-year-old level. Yeah, the books, from what I understand, aren't geared for kids, but they're about kids largely. This thing, yeah, I think it would be... I'm giving it 3 stars because I watched the whole thing, but I can sympathize with somebody that would give this 2.5 stars, thinking that this is just too much of a kid's show. And it's kind of like, it's like Harry Potter is to me. It's got a lot of dark theme stuff going on, but couldn't hold my interest. I couldn't watch, all the Harry Potter movies because it just felt like it was for kids. I just couldn't take it serious enough, and this suffers from the same thing, I think. 5 stars 2 days ago. Here we finally have a faithful adaptation that will satisfy original fans and open so many doors for the future of the series. Side note, it's the best fantasy trilogy and my favorite book series of all time. I'm going to kind of disagree on that. I don't think this is that popular. There are a lot of fantasy things out there that are. Certainly, we know Game of Thrones on HBO. We know it had the reputation even before it was made into a series. The books were very popular. This, I don't think it has reached that same level with the public at large. So I think HBO is going to have to do a far better job on this, and it's going to have to do better than just 8-episode seasons, in my opinion, to make it popular like Game of Thrones was, because Game of Thrones was popular in book format far before it was an HBO thing. So this needs to work harder, in my opinion. It needs to do a lot better. 5 stars from 2 days ago. As a longtime fan of the books, it's refreshing to see an adaptation that is on equal footing with the original source. There are some changes, yes, but all of them make the story flow more smoothly. It's bold and dark, and I love everything about it. It's not that bold, and it's not that dark. I think it needs to become more of those to actually be more than just 2.5 to 3 stars. That's why I say this isn't 5 stars. I don't know what they're thinking exactly. 4.5 stars. I disagree. Some brilliant acting and truly absorbing character development really elevate this adaptation. Loses half a star to uneven pacing. Why does episode 3 drag when episode 7 feels very rushed? I'll agree. But it looks fantastic, is brilliantly directed, and is based on a fantastic book series that the producers adapt with great skill. Best thing on TV in ages. Well done, Bad Wolf and the BBC. I think they're giving it too much credit, but I'll agree on the pacing. Like some episodes, they really drag, like we're on the river, for example. And then other episodes, they feel really rushed. And, the last 2 episodes I thought were great. They were just about right. If they could just keep it like the last couple of episodes and just keep the whole show like that on season 2, this would become a lot more popular. But I'm having my doubts that that's what they're going to do. It seems like they want to drag this out a lot. Okay, 5 stars, visually stunning, character development is great. Yeah, it is visually stunning, I'll give it that. The visual stunning part of it is the best part of it. That's not enough, though. It can still be boring at times. But yes, visually stunning in every way. I can't find any faults with this visually. I think it is visually better than almost every other thing out there on HBO. It's visually better than a lot of other TV shows that are a lot more popular, but we still are going to have one hell of a story to keep us interested, and particularly when we only have 8-episode seasons. So 3 stars 3 days ago. The series is interesting, but I have some comments about the first episode and the last. The first episode is really slow, and it doesn't show the problematic and the characters well. You have to get to the second to get really interested. The last episode, it has a few details wrong in the script. Spoiler, Lyra's mother is supposed to be evil, or at least she believes that she is doing something great for humanity, like defitting evil by making experiments on children. But at the end, when she is with Lord Asriel, yeah, it's like it can't, like I said before, it can't make up its mind if we're supposed to believe that Lyra's mother is evil, or she's just forced to do these things, or she's like between a rock and a hard place and regrets what she's doing. It can't make up its mind. I'm not sure myself, and I've watched all 8 episodes, and I've paid attention the whole way through, and I'm not sure whether she's actually evil or not, because she saved her own daughter. Like, she had all these feelings for her daughter in one of the end episodes, and then in earlier episodes she's almost totally callous towards her daughter, doesn't give a crap what her daughter thinks. it doesn't quite fit, like I don't know what to think about that. And I could say that's a flaw with, maybe the writers don't know what they're going to do with her yet, or maybe they only know in the broadest of strokes where she's going to end up eventually, but they don't know how to get there. I get that feeling about her character because I don't know if I'm supposed to really like her or not. 3.5 stars 3 days ago. Some uneven pacing aside, it does make a strong effort to stay close to the original book's plot course, which doesn't always translate best in a filmed format, but the show is overall very good. Fans of the original books should be well pleased. The series is mostly faithful to the source material. It alters minor things and front-loads story bits from the next book, but not to its detriment. Those not already familiar with the story will enjoy the fantasy world building and the beginning of the nascent hero's journey, maybe. I'll kind of agree. I don't know anything about the books, really, very, very little. I did know going into this that, the premise was that in this world, it was an alternate world, like a parallel world to ours. You could cross between, and that the people in this world, their souls were in their demon animal characters. That's all I knew. That's everything I knew, and it worked for me. But again, the pacing, it felt very slow at times, and I can't speak to the source material, but I thought it was still a 3-star production. We'll see how it ends up in season 2. If the first episode of season 2 bores me, then I'm going to call this just a waste of time. So I'm hoping it doesn't. 1.5 stars 3 days ago. I was not overly impressed with episode 1. Certainly not enough to bother watching more episodes. Yeah, I thought episode 1 really overly relied upon the visuals. So if the visuals weren't your cup of tea, or you knew a little bit too much from the books about what you should be seeing, then the visuals wouldn't be enough to make up for the slowness of the first episode. But yeah, it tried to rely upon the visuals on that first episode to compensate. And it mostly worked for me because I'm not a big fan of the books. I didn't know what to expect exactly. And my memory from seeing that movie back in, I don't know if it was 2008. That was so long ago, I can't really remember it. So it still largely worked enough to keep me watching episode to episode. 4 stars 3 days ago. His Dark Materials Season 1 will rate 4 out of 5 stars. The direction and script has done well bringing this adaptation to the screen, bringing a fantasy science fiction world with humans and demons. The characters build up. The cast ensemble is good. It does have its fair share of action and thrills. Wonderful visual effects. The pacing can be a little slow moving, still worth checking out. 4.5 stars. The show demands a lot of its young main characters, and they nail their work for most of the time. The show's SFX are outstanding and on par with, if sometimes not better than, the movie from 2007. Most of the actors do a better job, in my opinion, but that's also due to the great writing and good directing the show has compared to the movie, but probably due to the lack of source material the first 2 books have. It makes the first few episodes a bit slow, and some relationships between characters. Yeah, again, that's what I'm finding. A lot of people agree with me. It was kind of slow at times. You don't have any, from my point of view, I don't have anything to fill in the gaps from the book. So I found there to be just enough to figure out the relationships between the characters, but maybe that's part of the mystery too, to get me to watch the second episode. The acting, I didn't find any of the acting to be bad or off-putting. I haven't watched every episode twice. I've watched them all just a single time, but nothing stood out to me that they did a bad performance. The only thing that felt a little cringy to me sometimes was the voice acting on the bear, the voice acting on the polar bear or the armored bear character. Sometimes in some situations it felt a little too cartoonish and a little bit too like a child's type material, and I think that's just the voice acting on the bear. But it didn't work for me completely. Otherwise, all the actual actors' performances worked for me. Maybe Lin-Manuel Miranda's character, his blimp or dirigible pilot character, sometimes he felt a little bit cartoonish. His dialogue wasn't 100%, but it was still enough for me to not cringe completely. But it wasn't a 100%. but I'm not going to say he did a bad job. I think it was just the writing could have been tweaked a little bit better. Still, this is 3-star, no question about it. 4.5 stars 3 days ago. This show was gripping and wildly amusing throughout, but I was left disappointed by the finale, which is why I can't go to 5 stars, but a great watch overall. Okay, the finale, I'll say that they left it on a mystery, like them walking into an alternate world. You don't know which world that is. It could be our world, but most likely it's some other world, the one they see, the floating city in the Aurora Borealis. I'm gonna continue watching, and when season 2 comes along, it's enough for me to start watching it again. But it better deliver. It better not get boring, them walking out into some boring scene that it just drags from there. If it does, I'm going to be really hard on this. I wasn't disappointed by the ending because I felt that it ended with enough mystery, but it ended in a way that I think if the series were canceled, it still had a finality to it. Maybe that's where they were going with that, but we'll see. The jury's still out. 4 stars 4 days ago. Odd place to end the show, I'm afraid, but good show. It could be that it feels like it's odd because, again, 8-episode seasons. I don't know whose idea this was. I hope it's not the thing going forward. I hope it doesn't catch on and then every show out there becomes an 8-episode show. I don't want to see that. It can work, but I'd rather see like at least 16 episodes. I don't, if it were up to me, we'd have 23, 24 episode seasons because that's what I grew up with on network television. We're not going to return to those days, I guess, but at least could we get, 16 episodes maybe? I wish, but I have a bad feeling that this 8-episode thing is going to be the way it's going to be for a while. We'll see how it works out. That may be why it feels like it ended in a weird place, though. 4.5 stars. Wonderful, although the relations of humans and demons have failed a bit. We had perfect acting and pacing and extremely fidelity with the book who has inspired it. Some of this English I have trouble reading. Not my reading, my narration of words isn't the best to begin with, but some of this grammar just like it really tongue-ties me. But they're saying the pacing was perfect. I'll disagree, it's not. The middle really dragged. The relationships between the humans and the demons, it failed a bit because logic just says we should see a lot more, and we didn't see that much of it, so it's like they're avoiding it, or they just didn't have the budget to show too much of it. It's a little bit disappointing, I'll agree with that. 3 stars. I really wanted to like this series, but somehow it's missing something. Probably next season will hold some good. Yeah, what it's missing, I think, more characterization between the characters and the demons. A little bit more background on, it kind of teases us that these characters in this alternate world do have some scientific knowledge of some type on this dust and on the bond between humans and demons, but it doesn't share that with the audience, and I think it should share more of that with the audience, and to me that's a disappointment, and that's a flaw in the story. They shouldn't have made so much of it a mystery to the audience, and yet telling us at the same time that some characters know a lot more. How come we couldn't know a lot more too? I thought it would have been better if we had known a lot more, but it wants it to remain a mystery, so if they keep doing that in season 2, I'm going to say it's rotten. So we better get some answers in season 2 is what I'm saying. 5 stars 4 days ago. I love this series so much. It does a brilliant job at capturing the essence of the books. I love how it incorporates aspects of the subtle knife and the golden compass to tie these books together in an awesome way. I also love the casting, especially for Mrs. Coulter, Lyra, and Azriel. These actors bring wonderful layers of depth to these characters. I really love all the characters. Ma Costa and the Egyptians also stood out for me, as did Lee Scoresby, Serafina Pekkala, and Lorik Bernardson. Okay, well, largely we know the one main actor that's identified by most Americans is going to be James McAvoy. We didn't get as much of him as we should have probably, like, yes, the first episode, and then he's largely absent again until the final episode. Okay, there's only 8 episodes and the story needed it to be that way, but if the second series has him disappearing for most of the time again, it's going to be a fail. They need to put James McAvoy front and center for a lot more in season 2, and that's my opinion, and I think if that doesn't happen, it's going to be a big mistake. 4 stars 4 days ago. I really enjoy this series. Can't wait until the next episodes come out. 3.5 stars 4 days ago. Adaptations are always made for existing fans, I'm sure, or at least in this day and age, adapting written word into TV should pay fan service. And while his Dark Materials is full of exactly the sort of content that fans will admire and adore, to the uninitiated it can be daunting to dive into unless they have a significant amount of help. I fall into the latter category, having never read the Philip Pullman books. I did try to, but I think fantasy is best served by the sort of high fantasy delivered by a movie like Lord of the Rings. I kind of agree and disagree. Like this reviewer, I don't know anything, or I didn't know anything about the books, but it still worked just enough for me to keep me watching. But I can see that, yeah, if you don't have a lot more knowledge on exactly what the history of this college is in this alternate world, the magisterium, etc., there's not a whole lot there. You know, you kind of have to use your imagination to help you out. If you're not able to supply enough to kind of help you out, then you're going to have a big problem, because this doesn't really give you a whole lot on that. It gives you a lot of visual style to it, but there's nothing in those visuals that give you the background you need to feel like this is real. You're going to have to use some of your imagination to help you out. And, you know, that's a personal thing, a very subjective thing. Some people don't mind using some of their imagination, and other people need this actually stated to them some way in the film, either visually or through dialogue. And so, yeah, it's going to be one of those things that some people are going to have a hard time with it. Personally, it worked for me, but I'm not everybody. So I'm going to say I largely agree with the 81% on the audience score. But if season 2 doesn't give us a lot more, if it doesn't give us more on the relationship between the humans and the demons, if it doesn't give us more actual tangible background material on the magisterium, if it doesn't like give us more information on just why we should care about this one explorer character who's in our world in the Arctic, if it just kind of keeps leaving that up to mystery, and it just adds more mysterious stuff from, say, another fantasy dimension, which I think it's going to do, then it's going to be a complete fail on season 2. So I hope it does better. But as far as just the first 8 episodes go, I agree. This is worth watching. The visuals are fantastic. The production value is fantastic. And I'm going to say the 81% audience score is fair. Critics, I don't know, because, you know, the critics are all over the place, and I agree sometimes and I disagree others. But I will see you on another episode of Rotten Reviews.